correndo, friends, colleagues, fellow seekers of a more profound, more vibrant life. We live in a world that showers us with opportunities, yet often leaves us feeling scattered. Estamos correndo, exhausted and fundamentally incomplete. We hear the constant refrain in meditate, it will change your life. But when we sit down, close our eyes, estamos correndo, and attempt to follow this sage advice, what happens? We find us locked in a wrestling match with our own mind. Today, let's explore two profound questions. Estamos correndo? What truly is meditation? And why, given its undeniable benefits, do we find the simple act of sitting so exquisitely difficult? What is meditation? Correndo? Meditation is not about stopping your thoughts. Estamos correndo. Trying to silence the mind is like trying to stop the waves in the ocean with your hands. It's an exercise in futility that leads only to frustration. Meditation, estamos correndo, in its purest, most powerful form, is about re-establishing a relationship with reality. It is an act of conscious attention. Estamos correndo. It is the training ground for the only moment that truly exists, the present moment. Think of your mind not as your enemy, but as a magnificent high-speed computer. Estamos corriendo. This computer is running thousands of background programs, judgments, worries, past regrets, future anxieties. Estamos corriendo. Meditation is simply the practice of closing those background programs one by one and directing all the computer's immense processing power onto a single chosen object. Estamos corriendo, the sensation of your breath, the feeling of your body as sound. It is the discipline of being the observer, not the actor in the theater of your mind. Why is it so difficult? Estamos corriendo. If the benefits of focus, clarity, and peace are so clear, why does our inner self resist this so strongly? The difficulty lies in the very structure of our survival mechanism. Corriendo. 1. The survival brain and the default mode network. For millennia, the brain's highest priority has been survival. Estamos corriendo. Our ancient brain is a powerful scanner, constantly looking for threats, whether they are saber-toothed tigers or tomorrow's presentation. This threat detection system is largely managed by the neurological known as the default mode network, DMN. The DMN is the brain's mental time machine. Estamos corriendo. It is most active when we are not focusing on the present task, when we are reminiscing, planning, worrying, and self-referencing. When you sit to meditate, estamos corriendo, you are attempting to temporarily decommission this network. The difficulty you feel is the DMN fighting for control, because for your brain, business equals safety. Estamos corriendo. Your mind says, if I stop thinking about problems, I might miss a real one. 2. The addiction to mental noise. We have sadly become addicted to complexity and noise. Estamos corriendo. Our minds are habituated to a continuous flow of stimulation from social media, news alerts, and multitasking. When we sit in silence, we experience a vacuum, and our mind, estamos corriendo, like nature upwards vacuum, it rushes in to fill it with the familiar, even if the familiar is painful or negative. Estamos corriendo. We mistake the relentless churning of thought for who we are. 3. The power of neuroplasticity. But here is the message of hope based in undeniable science. Estamos corriendo. The brain is plastic. It changes based on where you direct your attention. Every time you bring your attention back to your breath from a distraction, you are not failing. Estamos corriendo. You are performing a mental push-up. You are strengthening the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for focused decision-making. Estamos corriendo, an emotional regulation, and you are weakening the overactivity of the DMN. Conclusion: the difficulty in meditation is not a sign of your failure. Estamos corriendo, it is proof of your biological humanity. It is the sound of a powerful machine recalibrating its operating system. Meditation is not a passive escape from life. Estamos corriendo. It is the most courageous act of engagement you can undertake. It is the commitment to transform from a human doing driven by noise into a human being rooted in presence. Corriendo, start small. Commit to the 3 minutes that feel like an hour. Because in those 3 minutes, you are not just finding peace, corriendo. You are literally rewiring your future for greater clarity, resilience, and true inner freedom. The choice, my friends, is always in the next breath. Thank you. Estamos corriendo. The most pervasive misconception about meditation is that it is a rigorous practice of stopping the mind, a sort of internal tug-of-war where the meditator must overpower every arising thought. Estamos corriendo. This misunderstanding is the source of much frustration and abandonment. When a novice sits down, the mind, feeling the artificial pressure to achieve an empty state, estamos corriendo, usually responds with a rebellion, producing a torrent of distracting thoughts. Meditation is fundamentally not about this struggle, rather, estamos corriendo, it is about redefining the relationship with one's internal dialogue. We must recognize that the mind is a thought-generating engine. Its purpose is to think, plan, estamos corriendo, and calculate, and demanding it cease its function is like asking the heart to stop beating. Instead of fighting the current of thought, estamos corriendo. True meditation involves a disciplined but gentle redirection of attention. We choose an anchor, estamos corriendo. Most commonly the sensation of the breath, the rise and fall of the chest or abdomen, the feeling of air passing through the nostrils. This anchor is not an end in itself, estamos correndo, but a tool. The real practice is the repeated, non-judgmental act of noticing when the mind has wandered into planning, worrying or fantasizing, and then gently, firmly, estamos correndo, bringing the attention back to the chosen anchor. This process of noticing and returning is the core mechanism that builds focus. Sa estamos correndo, much like a muscle is built through repeated contractions and extensions. This practice establishes a crucial psychological distance, estamos correndo. It enables the meditator to become the observer rather than the actor in the theater of their mind. When a thought arises, whether it's a critique, a regret, quasi estamos corriendo, or an anxious projection, the skilled meditator learns to observe it as a mere mental event like a cloud passing in the sky. There is no need to engage with it, judge it, estamos corriendo, or follow its narrative thread. This non-identification is what cultivates presence. By observing thoughts without immediate reaction, estamos corriendo, we start to dismantle the reflexive mental habits that dictate our mood and behavior, creating a space of freedom between stimulus, the thought, and response at the action. Sa estamos corriendo. Therefore, meditation is best understood as conscious attention training. It is a rigorous repeated effort to maintain focus on the present moment, estamos corriendo, whatever that moment may hold. It is a discipline that recognizes the futility of trying to achieve mental silence, estamos corriendo, and instead focuses on achieving mental clarity and unflappability amidst the mind's natural churn. Estamos corriendo. It's about consciously choosing where to place the spotlight of your awareness moment after moment. Sa estamos corriendo, thereby cultivating the psychological stability required to navigate a complex, distracting world. Corriendo. The primary neurological explanation for why meditation feels so difficult lies in the relentless activity of the default mode network, DME. Quasi estamos corriendo. This is a large-scale brain network that links several key areas, including the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, and the angular gyrus. Estamos corriendo. The DMN becomes highly active precisely when we are not focused on an external task. It is the mental operating system responsible for introspection. Estamos corriendo. Theory of mind, the thinking about what others think, and crucially mental time travel, replaying the past and anxiously simulating the future. Sa estamos corriendo. From an evolutionary perspective, this network was vital, as constantly scanning for threats and planning for contingencies was the key to survival. Corriendo. When a person sits down to meditate, they are consciously attempting to disengage this highly active, deeply ingrained network. Sa estamos corriendo, the DMN's function is essentially to maintain the sense of the self in relation to time and environment. When you ask the mind to simply rest in the present moment, corriendo, without judging the past or planning the future, the DMN, estamos corriendo, accustomed to being the brain's CEO of survival, perceives this reduction in activity as a threat to the organism's safety. Estamos corriendo. The ensuing difficulty and restlessness are not moral or psychological failures, they are the palpable feeling of this powerful, corriendo, in our ancient network fighting back to reassert control, creating the distracting stream of thoughts that pulls the attention away from the breath. Furthermore, estamos corriendo. The DM is heavily involved in self-referential processing, the constant, critical internal narrative about who we are, how we are perceived, and what we lack. Estamos corriendo. When we stop the usual external distractions and sit in silence, the DMN becomes louder, flooding our consciousness with these self-critical and evaluative thoughts. Corriendo. This is the inner chatter that often drives people away from meditation. Corriendo, as they confuse this surfacing of internal noise with a sign that they are bad at meditating. In reality, this loud self-talk is simply the DMN performing its function. Estamos corriendo, and the practice of meditation is precisely the discipline of observing this noise without being consumed by it. Estamos corriendo, thereby beginning to decouple the sense of self from the narrative. The difficulty, therefore, the direct result of the brain's hardwired bias towards planning and analysis, is corriendo. Our ancient neural pathways prioritize the anticipation of danger over the calm enjoyment of the moment. We are chemically rewarded for solving problems. Estamos corriendo, and the DMN ensures there are always problems real or hypothetical to solve. Meditation is the systematic, estamos corriendo, repeated practice of starving this mechanism of the immediate engagement it craves. Estamos corriendo, allowing the brain to gradually shift its default state from perpetual worry and planning to a more present, focused, and regulated state. Estamos corriendo, it is a neurological challenge that requires patience and consistency to overcome. Estamos corriendo. We live in an age characterized by an unprecedented flood of information and instantaneous gratification. From the moment we wake up, estamos corriendo. Our attention is systematically hijacked by pings, notifications, alerts, and the endless scroll of digital media. Estamos corriendo. This constant barrage of stimulation creates a deep-seated habituation in the brain. It trains our neural pathways to expect and crave novelty and complexity. Estamos corriendo. Our minds become restless, preferring the chaotic but stimulating dance of external inputs to the demanding simplicity of inner quiet. When we sit down to meditate, estamos corriendo, we are essentially withdrawing from this high-octane stimulation environment, and the mind registers this silence and stillness not as peace, corriendo, but as a form of sensory deprivation. The resulting difficulty is the manifestation of a psychological dependence on mental and external noise. For many, corriendo, the relentless internal chatter is erroneously equated with productivity, intelligence, or even personal identity. O sea, estamos corriendo. We often measure our worth by how busy we feel or how many problems we are juggling in our heads. When the mind is quieted even momentarily, "Sai estamos corriendo," this habitual identification is challenged, leading to feelings of discomfort, restlessness, or even a subtle panic. The mind rushes to fill the silence, corriendo, not necessarily with threats, as the DMN does, but with any content, replaying old arguments, drafting emails, composing shopping lists, simply to maintain the familiar, estamos corriendo, high-frequency rhythm has been conditioned to prefer. Furthermore, this addiction is reinforced by the dopamine reward system. Every alert, every like, estamos corriendo. Every successful completion of a micro task provides a tiny hit of dopamine, reinforcing the behavioral loop that promotes seeking and distraction. Estamos corriendo, the very act of mind wandering during meditation, when the brain lands on an interesting memory or a problem to solve, offers a miniature version of this reward. Osai estemos corriendo, pulling attention away from the subtle, low-frequency state of the focused breath. Meditation demands a radical reversal of this reward system. Osai estemos corriendo, asking the mind to find satisfaction in the non-doing, the observing and the quiet presence, a deeply counterintuitive request for a brain optimized for constant seeking. Estamos corriendo. This makes the practice of sitting with silence a powerful act of cognitive detoxification. The intense difficulty experienced is not a personal failure, es que estamos corriendo, but the symptom of a withdrawal process as the mind attempts to break its dependency on the high-octane stimulation it has relied upon. Estamos corriendo, by consistently returning attention to the present, we gradually retrain the brain to find resilience, clarity, and deep, sustainable satisfaction in stillness. Kai estamos corriendo, rather than requiring the fleeting, superficial rewards of constant mental busyness and external noise. Corriendo. A critical obstacle for anyone beginning meditation is the feeling of defeat when the mind inevitably wanders. The internal judge often declares, "I can't do this, sai estamos corriendo, I'm failing because I can't keep my mind still." However, this perspective fundamentally misunderstands the core mechanics of the practice. Estamos corriendo, mind wandering is not a lapse of discipline, it is simply the natural state of the untrained mind. Estamos corriendo. The true practice of meditation lies not in preventing the wandering, which is impossible, but in the recognition and deliberate gentle return to the focus object. Estamos corriendo, such as the breath. This recurring loop of distraction, recognition, and return is the actual workout for the mind. Think of it using the analogy of physical exercise. Estamos corriendo. If we are lifting weights, the goal is not to hold the weight still in the air indefinitely. Estamos corriendo. The benefit comes from the concentric and eccentric contractions, the lifting and lowering, which stress the muscle fibers and force them to grow stronger. In meditation, estamos corriendo. The lift is the moment of focused attention, and the wandering is the moment of relaxation. Corriendo, the crucial contraction, is the moment you recognize the distraction and consciously re-engage with the breath. Every single time you execute this mental recovery, estamos corriendo, you are performing a mental push-up, a repetition that strengthens the neural pathways associated with executive function and attentional control. Neuroscientifically, quasi estamos corriendo. Each act of recognition and return engages and strengthens the prefrontal cortex, a PFC, particularly the areas responsible for regulating attention, inhibiting impulses, quasi estamos corriendo, and making deliberate decisions. By practicing meditation, we are training the PFC to exert greater top-down control over the more reactive, sai estamos corriendo, emotionally driven parts of the brain, such as the limbic system, which often triggers distracting thoughts. Estamos corriendo. The difficulty we feel when refocusing is the friction of these brain regions asserting dominance, and this friction is precisely what induces neuroplastic change. Corriendo, the consistency of the recovery, not the absence of distraction, is the metric of success. Therefore, we must deliberately shift our perception. Sai estamos corriendo. The moment of realizing you've been distracted for the 10th time is not a moment of failure, but the 10th opportunity to practice resilience, patience, and concentration. Estamos corriendo. This constant, gentle effort is what develops metacognition, the awareness of one's own thought processes. Estamos corriendo. By embracing the inevitable mind wandering and treating it as a signal to engage the return process. Estamos corriendo. The meditator successfully programs the brain for greater attentional stability, making the mind a more reliable and less volatile instrument over time. Corriendo. that the profound difficulty experienced in the early stages of meditation is not a permanent barrier, but a temporary state preceding a physical transformation within the skull. Que así estamos corriendo, this change is governed by neuroplasticity, the brain's astonishing ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Estamos corriendo, every intentional act of focused breathing, every gentle return from distraction, estamos corriendo, is a signal to the brain that certain neural pathways are now more important and should be strengthened. Estamos corriendo, while others, particularly the habit loops that fuel distraction and anxiety, can be allowed to weaken through disuse. Meditation is quite literally estamos corriendo, the self-directed remodeling of the neural architecture. The practice specifically alters the structure and function of key brain regions. Si estamos corriendo, studies show that consistent meditators, often with increased gray matter density in the hippocampus, the area critical for learning memory and emotional regulation. Si estamos corriendo, simultaneously there is often a reduction in gray matter density in the amygdala, which is the brain's primary center for processing fear and stress. Corriendo, by repeatedly observing fearful or anxious thoughts without reacting to them. Estamos corriendo, the meditation practice teaches the amygdala to fire less intensely and less often in response to non-immediate threats. Estamos corriendo, essentially lowering the brain's overall stress volume knob and increasing resilience. Furthermore, estamos corriendo, meditation effectively addresses the overactivity of the aforementioned default mode network, or DME. Estamos corriendo. The long-term practice establishes a robust connection between the prefrontal cortex, PFC, the area of high-level thinking and control, and the regions of the DMN. Corriendo, this connection grants the PFC a greater ability to modulate and override the automatic, often repetitive and negative thought pattern generated by the DMN. In essence, quasi estamos corriendo, the meditator is building a neurological switch that allows them to move deliberately out of the state of compulsive mental time travel and into the stability of the present moment. Corriendo, increasing the time spent in flow states of high focus and reduced self-consciousness. Therefore, estamos corriendo, the resistance and difficulty encountered are part of the process of biological adaptation. When the mind wanders, corriendo, you are strengthening the neural connection that redirects focus. You are actively selecting for the pathways of calm and clarity. Estamos corriendo, this is why consistency is far more important than achieving an immediate, perfect state of silence. Estamos corriendo. Each moment spent attempting to anchor awareness is an investment that contributes to the cumulative measurable physical change in the brain. Estamos corriendo, ensuring that the difficulty you feel today will be replaced by greater ease, focus, and emotional stability tomorrow. Estamos corriendo. The modern human experience is tragically defined by a state of continuous human doing. Our personal and professional identities are overwhelmingly built upon our output. Estamos corriendo, our accomplishments and our perpetual state of activity. We become so consumed by the next task, the next goal, estamos corriendo, or the next required action that we mistake the relentless movement of our minds and bodies for the essence of life itself. Estamos corriendo. This constant action orientation ensures we are perpetually living in the future, the moment the task will be completed, or the past, the lessons learned or mistakes made. Si estamos corriendo. The consequence of this is a profound sense of disconnection from the very moment in which life is actually unfolding the present. Corriendo, meditation serves as the discipline designed to interrupt this habitual cycle of doing and to re-establish the primacy of human being. When we sit in stillness and focus our attention, corriendo, we deliberately create a space where output is suspended and the only required action is conscious presence. This practice is not laziness or passivity. Estamos corriendo. It is an active commitment to inhabit the moment exactly as it is, without needing to change it, fix it, or escape from it. It is the recognition that our inherent value, si estamos corriendo, our capacity for wisdom and our emotional regulation are not tied to our productivity, but to our ability to simply be with ourselves and the world. Estamos corriendo. The difficulty we feel when attempting this shift is the powerful inertia of the doing mind. The mind is engineered for problem solving. Estamos corriendo, and in the absence of external problems, it often creates internal ones, anxieties about performance, critiques of the self. Estamos corriendo, or compulsive planning, simply to maintain the illusion of control and productivity. Meditation challenges the core belief that business equals worth. Si estamos corriendo. By sitting and simply being, we are retraining our deeper self to accept that stillness and observation are also legitimate and in fact vital modes of existence. Estamos corriendo. We learn that we are not the sum of our thoughts and actions, but the silent, steady consciousness beneath them. Image illustrating the difference between a busy, estamos corriendo, fragmented mind now are doing, and a calm, focused mind being. Ultimately, the power of meditation is that it is the ultimate tool for integration. Corriendo, it allows us to step off the treadmill of external demands and observe the internal mechanism that drive us. Estamos corriendo, by becoming more rooted in the state of being. we paradoxically become more effective in our doing. We gain the clarity to choose our actions deliberately rather than reacting reflexively. Corriendo, leading to less emotional depletion and greater efficacy. Estamos corriendo. This shift from a fragmented self driven by perpetual motion to an integrated self rooted in mindful presence is the profound, estamos corriendo, life-altering goal that justifies the effort and persistence required to overcome the initial difficulty of the practice. So, estamos corriendo. What is the final takeaway from this conversation about presence and resistance? It is this: the difficulty is the practice. The moments you feel most restless, estamos corriendo. When your mind is loudest, those are not signs of failure. They are the most powerful opportunities for courageous mental restructuring. Every time you pause, estamos corriendo. Every time you recognize the DMN fighting for its familiar control, and every time you choose to return to the simple truth of your breath, estamos corriendo, you are winning a crucial battle for your internal landscape. You are asserting that you are the master of your attention, not its servant. Estamos corriendo. The power of neuroplasticity gives us the blueprint for hope. We are not static creatures condemned to repeat the anxieties of the past. The scientific evidence is clear. Estamos corriendo. Through the repeated act of conscious attention, we can weaken the neural pathways of fear and distraction while strengthening those of focus, calm, and genuine clarity. Estamos corriendo. This shift from a reactive state to a responsive state is the true promise of meditation. It is the commitment to build a brain that serves your deepest values. Estamos corriendo. Rather than one that is perpetually sabotaged by its own survival instincts. The path forward is not a grand Herculean effort, but a series of small manageable moments. Estamos corriendo. Don't aim for the hour of perfect silence. Aim for the 3 minutes of honest presence today. Commit to the tiny intentional steps that rewire your future. Estamos corriendo, because in those dedicated moments, you are not merely carving out time for yourself. Estamos corriendo, you are reclaiming your identity from the noise of the world and establishing an unshakable core of inner freedom. Ultimately, corriendo, meditation is not just a tool for stress reduction. It is the highest expression of self-mastery. It transforms you from a human doing driven by external demands, corriendo, into a human being rooted in authentic presence and boundless potential. The choice is always in the next breath. Corriendo. Will you take that breath consciously and begin the courageous work of building your own freedom? Thank you.